Say what you will of us. Call us heathens because we denied your weak pretender gods. Call us savages because we strike at you. But know this. It is we who are closest to the ruinous powers. We, most favored of the gods, shall burn your lands, revel in your suffering, and destroy you. Despair, for all that remains for you is the taste of northern steel and the end of your world. Such is the will of the gods.
After the Battle of Astolfen Bridge, Sigmar had gained his shield and had full manhood status in the tribe of the Unberogen. He undertook a purging of the terrible beastmen who dwelt in the massive expansive forests of the Unberogen lands, making the tribal holdings safe in the name of his father the king. Slaying entire tribes of the beasts single-handed and avenging their prior depredations on the villages of not only the Unberogans, but also of other tribes. It was not only beasts and other foul creatures that Sigmar overcame, but also the warriors of the other tribes, as Tutajan raiders burned and pillaged northernmost Unberogan holdings, looting villages and stealing cattle. With the aid of the dwarfs, particularly the legendary forge master Ulric the Mad, the Unberogans produced countless suits of fine iron armour and strong iron swords and axes to arm the Unberogan warriors. These weapons would later be integral to allowing the Unberogan to overcome the terror charging down from the far north, slaughtering their way through the Udosi's tribal lands, and then making their way to invade the lands of the Cherusans and the Talyushans. The mighty Norsai emerged from their frozen kingdom to make all before them a sacrifice to the dark gods. The Cherusans and Talyushans put aside their long territorial rivalry to resist the Northmen, but not even the combined strength of the two tribes could withstand the unquenchable fury of the Norsai hordes, and not even the fierce Tutajans were willing to ride out against the Norsemen. The power-hungry king, Artur, had elected to lie in wait until after the Norsai had annihilated his northern neighbours, desiring to take the lands of the Cherusans and Talyushans after the Norsai destroyed them for him. As the Tutajans would not dare risk themselves against the Norsai, the Cherusans and Talyushans were forced to look further south for succour. King Aloysius of the Cherusans and King Krugar of the Talyushans both sent their respective emissaries, Ebrolf and Noctur, to the court of King Bjorn, warning him of the peril to the north and beseeching him for the aid of the mighty Unberogans. In return, they offered the sword oaths of their respective chieftains, an eternal oath of friendship and unconditional aid to King Bjorn and his heirs if they would deliver them from the terror of the Northmen. King Bjorn, after conferring with his advisors, the learned Eofrith and Alfgeir, Marshal of the Reich, agreed to aid the beleaguered tribes, knowing that after they had finished with the Cherusans and Talyushans, the Norsai would then sweep south unopposed, destroying all in their path, including the Unberogan. Sigmar was not a part of the grand muster that followed, as his father had left him with the charge of protecting the land while many of the tribe's warriors were marching north. Ever the dutiful son, he worked to defend his father's kingdom, as well as train men to look to their own defence in times of conflict, if he could not be there in time to protect them. Such was the case when Arthur's Tutajans savagely raided the Unberogan town of Ubisreich. Sigmar swore by Ulric that when the warriors returned, he would make a terrible reckoning with the Northern King. In the north, the combined forces of the Talyushans, Cherusans and Unberogans fought the Norsai. Though the Norse were ferocious warriors of unparalleled strength and skill, their vicious might was countered by the superior numbers and discipline of the southern tribes. Despite this, the cost had been high to drive the Norsai back to their frozen kingdoms across the seas, and many thousands of southern tribesmen had fallen to their fury, including King Bjorn himself, who was slain in single combat with the Norsai king, a terrible champion of Khorne, clad in red steel, wielding a flaming sword. With the death of his father, Sigmar ascended to leadership of the Unberogen. No sooner than his father had been laid in the warrior's hill, the grieving son had sworn to slaughter his father's enemies. In time, Sigmar marched north with a massive army, calling upon the sworn oaths of King Krugar and King Aloysius, and thus adding their own musters to his own. He'd also endeavoured to bring the Teutogens into his final push against the Norsai, but King Arthur remained withdrawn from such foreign affairs. Indeed, Teutogen raiders even waylaid Sigmar's army as they passed through the land of Forslag. In the north, Sigmar lifted the Norsai siege of the Udoses' capital and gained the support of King Walifor of the Udoses, who eagerly sent his own armies to aid in finally putting an end to the depredations of the raiders, who so daily ravaged his people. Against the untold numbers of Sigmar's army, not even the ferocity of the Norsai could prevail, and they were decisively defeated and permanently driven from the Reich Basin to the land now known as Norska. Using catapults to smash their wolf ships into kindling and slaughtering untold thousands of them, Sigmar had essentially carried out the death of an entire race, thus avenging not only the death of his father, but also the fate of the many thousands who had been slain by Norsai invasions. The Norsai would later rebuild and continue to pose a great threat to the nascent empire for many years in Sigmar's lifetime, however.
The fame and renown of Sigmar, hammer-bearer of the High King of the Dwarfs, spread far and wide. Sigmar, the chief, mighty lord of the Unberogen, and other tribes of mankind.
With the threat of the Norsai addressed for a time, Sigmar turned his attentions towards his dream of empire. Through a string of heroic battles and tense negotiations, Sigmar succeeded in bringing the tribes under his rule. Having already gained the loyalty of the Chosen, Talyuchan and Udoses through their loyalty to his father, such alliances would provide the base for how he would bring the tribes together, as the heroism of Bjorn had won the respect of nearly all who dwelt in the Reich Basin. Sigmar also succeeded in bringing the Azerborns under his rulership through a tense diplomatic mission to that eastern tribe. Sigmar made no attempt to bring the Rops men to the empire, however, as they were so far north and east that they were, for all intents and purposes, the people of a different land altogether. Another limitation of Sigmar's influence is that it did not stretch far north enough to bring the Ungol horse tribes into the empire, but the tribes of the Reich continued to maintain passable enough relations with them. The tribes of the Reich who continued to outright refuse Sigmar's call for unity were destroyed outright, such as the now extinct Frickings tribe. The three most famous events of Sigmar's quest for unification are likely on how he brought the Teutogens, the Brigundians, and the Thurgian tribes under his control.